It was a frigid February morning in Shelby, Ohio, and the air was thick with tension. A 22-year-old woman had vanished, leaving behind more questions than answers. Her name was Gaberien Clevenger, and her sudden disappearance would unravel a chilling tale of love, betrayal, and a fatal encounter that no one could have predicted. How could this seemingly ordinary relationship lead to such darkness? Let's dive into the haunting story of Gaberien Clevenger and the events that left an entire town stunned. The small town of Shelby, Ohio, was about to be rocked by a case that would leave the community reeling. On a cold February day in 2020, a young woman's disappearance would set off a chain of events that would expose the dark underbelly of domestic strife. Gaberien Clevenger was 22, full of life and navigating the turbulent waters of a troubled marriage. She had dreams, friends who cared for her, and a whole life ahead of her. But on February 10, something went terribly wrong. Gaberien, known as Gabe, was born on November 8, 1997 in Mount Gilead, Ohio. Known for her infectious laughter and bubbly personality, she brought light to everyone around her. Gabe, at the age of 19, met her future husband Alec Blair while working at Walmart in 2016. Gabe's life seemed happy. They started dating in September 2016. By August 2019, the couple tied the knot. To the outside world, they seemed like a happy young couple. They would often post pictures of the two of them together on social media. But behind the social media smiles and carefully curated photos, Alec's manipulative behavior began to spiral out of control. Their once happy marriage was soon filled with fear, tension, and threats. Alec's controlling and verbally abusive behavior began to surface shortly after their wedding. Although Gabe initially defended him, it didn't take long for her friends and family to notice the cracks in their seemingly perfect relationship. The relationship between them quickly turned toxic. Alec destroyed Gabe's belongings in fits of rage, locked her in rooms, and constantly harassed her when she tried to leave. The pair lived together in a trailer home in Greenwich, Ohio after their marriage. But within months, the volatility in their relationship had escalated to the point that Gabe felt unsafe living with Alec any longer. Police reports detail multiple instances of Alec destroying Gabe's belongings in fits of rage. There were also reports of a break-in at the trailer home Gabe previously shared with Alec. While Alec was never definitively tied to the break-in, the incident left Gabe shaken and even more resolved to end all contact with him. Gabe called the police to report a break-in situation at her trailer. Gabe had contacted Alec asking if he was involved in the break-in. Alec denied involvement and mentioned mutual animosity due to the relationship. The police advised Gabe to pursue an eviction order from the landlord against Alec and mentioned that although Alec legally still had access, any disruptive behavior should be reported immediately. Since there wasn't any physical abuse from Alec's side, therefore, the police couldn't do much about the situation. They only advised Gabe to talk to the landlord and have his name taken off the lease. As the abuse intensified, Gabe made the difficult yet courageous decision to leave Alec. In January 2020, after only 5 months of marriage, she moved out of the trailer they shared and sought an annulment. Initially staying with her grandmother, Gabe later moved in with the family of a close friend. Lisa Davis, the friend's mother, had experienced domestic violence herself and recognized the signs in Gabe's situation. Concerned, Lisa urged Gabe to document the abuse and file a police report. She also assured Gabe that there were domestic violence shelters available if needed, or that she could stay at her home. Grateful for the support, Gabe accepted Lisa's offer and moved into the Davis household 2 months before the tragic events that would soon unfold. During her time at the Davis home, Lisa played a crucial role in guiding Gabe towards seeking help, providing not only shelter but emotional support. Lisa's personal experience with domestic abuse made her especially attuned to Gabe's struggles, and she took Gabe's situation seriously from the moment she heard the troubling details of her marriage. This move signified a turning point for Gabe, where she began to take steps to protect herself, even though the threat from Alec remained close. It was a decision born from survival and hope, though the peace Gabe sought was tragically short-lived. During this period, Gabe opened up to Lisa about the disturbing abuse she had endured from Alec. He would confine her to rooms, destroy her belongings, and verbally and emotionally torment her. His actions escalated to pouring alcohol on her things and urinating on them. Although Gabe hoped leaving Alec would end the abuse, it only worsened. Alec constantly harassed her through calls, texts, and social media, sending threats when she didn't respond. He would sometimes call and text her incessantly and would leave threatening voicemails. Upon learning of her growing closeness to CJ, Lisa's son Alec even targeted CJ, sending him threatening messages and intimate photos of Gabe to humiliate her. Fearing for her safety due to Alec's increasingly erratic and hostile behavior, Gabe filed for a protection order on January 22, 2020. She detailed the ongoing harassment, including a specific incident where Alec trapped her in the bathroom, yelling and calling her names, refusing to let her leave. At the hearing on February 5th, Gabe testified about the physical and emotional abuse, providing evidence of his destructive behavior, threatening messages, and harassment. Despite Alec admitting to having anger issues and sending disturbing messages, which goes as far as leaving a message on Facebook saying, "Hope she dies," the court magistrate denied the protection order. They ruled that Alec's actions, while troubling, did not meet Ohio's legal standard for domestic violence. The court explained that anger and property destruction were not classified as domestic violence under Ohio law, leaving Gabe unprotected. Tragically, just 6 days after being denied a protection order, the court's decision to not grant her a protective order proved fatal. On the morning of February 10, 2020, Alec Blair unexpectedly arrived at Lisa Davis's residence, where Gabe was staying. According to Davis, Blair told Gabe he wanted her to accompany him to the courthouse to finalize divorce paperwork. Initially hesitant, Gabe eventually agreed and left with Blair between 10:30 and 11 a.m. Gabe was scheduled to work a shift at Bob Evans that afternoon, but never showed up. This was highly unusual, as she was always punctual. Worried, Gabe's co-workers tried contacting her but received no answer. Ruth, her co-worker, who typically gave Gabe a ride, had received a text that morning stating Gabe's grandmother would be driving her instead. When Gabe failed to arrive for work, Ruth contacted both Gabe's grandmother and sister, only to find neither had heard from her. Concerned for Gabe's safety, her friends contacted Lisa Davis. Unable to reach Gabe, Davis reported her missing to the Shelby Police Department. In her interview with the police, Davis stated that her son, CJ, had told her about a heated argument between Gabe and Blair at their home. Following the argument, Gabe left with Blair and had not been seen since. After discovering threatening messages from Blair among Gabe's belongings, Davis contacted him. Blair provided conflicting accounts of what occurred, first claiming they argued and he left, then changing his story about where Gabe exited his car. Alarmed by Blair's inconsistent statements, Davis contacted the police again, fearing for Gabe's life. As concern for Gabe's safety grew, the Shelby Police Department sprang into action. Their immediate priority was to locate and question Alec Blair, as he was the last person known to have seen Gabe. Officers made multiple attempts to reach Alec by phone, but their calls went unanswered, deepening their suspicions. Just as investigators were considering their next move, Alec unexpectedly returned their call. In that phone call, Alec mentions that they were indeed heading to the courthouse for divorce stuff, but they had an argument as she didn't want to go, and so he left. Following this conversation, police decided to pay Alec a visit at his workplace. They found him there and began questioning him about Gabe's disappearance. Initially, Alec appeared cooperative, answering the officers' questions calmly. During the conversation with the police, Alec explained that he and Gabriella were discussing going to the courthouse for divorce paperwork, but she was reluctant to go. He mentioned that she got into his car briefly, but asked to be dropped off nearby on 2nd Street in Shelby. The police questioned him because Gabriella was reported missing after failing to show up for work, which was unusual for her. Alec admitted that her co-workers had also contacted him, but he claimed to have no knowledge of her current whereabouts. However, the investigation took a dramatic turn when Alec consented to a search of his vehicle. As officers examined the car, they made a chilling discovery. Traces of blood were found inside. This grim finding immediately elevated Alec from a person of interest to the prime suspect in Gabe's disappearance. The police took Alec into custody and brought him to the station for further questioning. The stakes had suddenly become much higher, and investigators knew they needed to get to the truth quickly. During the police interrogation, Alec was asked to explain his actions surrounding Gabriella's disappearance. He started by recounting their troubled relationship. highlighting his history of anger issues, which often led to verbal and physical altercations. The detectives, however, began questioning his account, pointing out that Gabriella's co-workers and others had become concerned when she failed to show up for work, an unusual behavior for her. Further probing revealed that blood was found inside Alec's car, which the police believed had been cleaned up. Alec initially attempted to explain the blood by claiming it came from a friend who had suffered a nosebleed. The investigators, unconvinced, pressed him, emphasizing that DNA tests would easily reveal the truth. He admitted that on the morning of the incident he contacted Gabriella to discuss their impending divorce and convinced her to meet. When pressed further, Alec confessed after a heated argument ensued in his car, during which Alec struck her, causing her to bleed. Alec claimed that after hitting her, he continued driving but soon pulled over near a golf course. Gabriella, according to Alec, was unconscious, but still alive when he removed her from the car and left her in a cornfield. He mentioned that he did not check on her further and left her lying on her back. Alec expressed his fear of being charged for domestic violence, suggesting that this fear stopped him from seeking help for Gabriella. As the interrogation progressed, the detectives noted inconsistencies in Alec's story. They pointed out that Alec could have sought help for Gabriella at any point, but instead chose to abandon her in the cold and foggy weather, which raised suspicions about her condition at the time. Alec, while admitting to hitting her, insisted she was still alive when he left her in the field. The police, however, strongly suggested that she might have already been dead, and that Alec was trying to cover up a far more serious crime than just a simple altercation. Despite Alec's attempts to downplay the situation, the detectives remained firm, pointing out the gravity of his actions and their doubts about the true sequence of events leading to Gabriella's disappearance. Acting on information provided by Alec, law enforcement formed a search party and went to a secluded cornfield on Bowman Street. This was the location Alec claimed to have left Gabe's unconscious body. Officers carefully searched the corn stalks, hoping to find Gabe. Their worst fears were confirmed when they discovered Gabe's lifeless body hidden in the corn. She had been savagely beaten and her body was covered in blood. The extent of Gabe's injuries was far worse than Alec had described. An autopsy revealed that Gabe had suffered 14 stab wounds, mostly to her neck and torso, in addition to the blunt force trauma Alec had confessed to. Investigators also made significant discoveries at Alec's home. A bloody knife and a rag were found in an outside trash can, while other blood-stained clothing was discovered in Alec's bedroom. Following his arrest and confession, Alec Blair was charged with aggravated murder, kidnapping and corpse abuse. The prosecution built a strong case against him, supported by overwhelming physical evidence and Blair's own admissions. Initially pleading not guilty, Blair changed his plea to guilty after 10 months in December 2020, citing a change of heart, sparing Gabe's family the agony of a trial but leaving many questions unanswered. The sentencing hearing was emotionally charged, with the prosecution demanding a life sentence without parole. They emphasized the brutality of the crime, highlighting its premeditated nature. The prosecution argued that Blair lured Gabe into his car under false pretenses before brutally attacking her. They detailed the horrific violence inflicted upon Gabe, including multiple stab wounds and near decapitation. The defense sought a lesser sentence of 35 years to life, presenting a forensic psychologist who discussed potential mitigating factors such as a family history of mental illness and Blair's own untreated mental health issues. However, the most powerful statement came from Gabe's mother, who addressed Blair directly in a heart-wrenching letter, writing, "I now know the definition of hate. God has already handed your deed to the devil. You are a monster." Blair remained silent during the hearing, but his attorney read a statement expressing remorse and acknowledging he deserved punishment and hate from Gabe's family and friends. The judge sentenced Blair to 45 years to life in prison, with eligibility for parole at age 67. The story of Gaberien Clevenger is a devastating reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and the tragic consequences of when cries for help go unheard. Gaberien's death begs the question, could this tragedy have been avoided if her protection order had been granted? How many more victims are out there, struggling in silence? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to hear more such thrilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. This was Secret Before Sleep. Have a good night and sleep well.